explained that we are in the Golut of Yishmael, which is mentioned in the Chumash and the prophets and words of the sages. But to understand this in its wider context, Golut and Geula, we know the people of Israel, we started as a nation when we were in the Golut of Egypt, then wandered 40 years in the desert, came to Eretz Israel, and then in the Chumash already, especially in the Parsha we read on last Shabbos, there are prophecies that after many years of Golut and troubles, we might experience where all mankind will turn to Hashem through the people of Israel. The end of the Golut and the starting of the Geula, of the redemption for Am Yisrael and for the whole world. And this is described in more detail in the words of the prophets, and especially in the book of Daniel. If you turn to the second chapter of Daniel, Nebuchadnezzar had apparently a prophetic dream. He didn't know quite what it meant. He didn't also remember what it was. But Daniel, if you turn in Jerusalem Bible to page 899, this is chapter 2, and we'll now give you here the description in verse 31, which Daniel was able to give to Nebuchadnezzar, who at that time had the largest empire in the world of his time, and he'd banished the Jews from our land, that burnt up the temple, but he found that the exiles from Jerusalem, some of them were extremely clever, and especially Daniel, who was able to find out, as he said, revealed to him by God, by Hashem, what was this dream of the king of Nebuchadnezzar. So it says in verse 29, "As for you, O king, your thoughts came to you upon your bed as to what should come to pass in the future, and he who reveals secret things makes known to you what shall come to pass. But as far as for me, this secret is not revealed to me because of any wisdom that I have more than any person who's living, but in order the interpretation to be made known to the king, so you yourself might know what thoughts you have in your heart. You, O king, you saw and behold a great image. This image was mighty, and the brightness was surpassing. It stood before you, and its form was terrible. The head of the image was made of fine gold, the breast and its arms of silver, its belly and its thighs of brass, its legs of iron, and its feet partly of iron and partly of clay. And you looked, and a stone was cut out without hands, which smote the image upon its feet, which were of iron and clay, and broke them to pieces. This was the iron, the clay, the brass, the silver, and the gold, broken in pieces together, and became like the chaff of the summer threshing floors, and the wind carried them away, so that no place was found for them. And the stone that smote the image became a great mountain, and filled the whole earth. This is the dream. And you might say, what is its meaning? we will state the meaning in front of the king. You, O king, king of kings, to whom the God of heaven has given the kingdom, the power, the strength, and the glory. And wherever the children of men dwell, the beasts of the field and the birds of the sky, he has given them into your hand, and has made you the ruler over them. You are this head of gold, and after you will arise another kingdom, inferior to you, and a third kingdom of brass, which shall bear rule over all the earth. And the fourth kingdom shall be strong as iron, because iron breaks to pieces, and subdues all things, and like iron that shatters, so shall it shatter and crush all the others. And whereas you did see the feet and the toes, partly of iron and partly of clay, so it shall be a divided kingdom, but there shall be in it the strength of the iron, just as you saw the iron mixed with miry clay, and as the toes of the feet were partly of iron and partly of clay, so the kingdom shall be partly strong and partly brittle. Whereas you did see iron mixed with miry clay, they shall mingle themselves with the seed of men, but they shall not cleave one to the other, just as iron does not mix with clay. And the days of these things will the God of heaven set up a kingdom, which shall never be destroyed, and the kingdom shall not be left to another people, but it shall break in pieces and consume all these other kingdoms, and it shall stand forever. Just as you did see that a stone was cut out of the mountain without hands, and that it broke in pieces the iron, the brass, the clay, the silver, and the gold. The great God has made known to the king what shall come to pass hereafter, and the dream is certain, and the meaning of it is sure. Now, these are the four kingdoms described here, and the last kingdom is a divided kingdom, part of it iron and part of it clay, and the toes similarly, partly of iron and partly of clay. So, what does all this mean in practice? Now, there have been many interpretations. We're going to follow the oral tradition, which is a very deep one, and which tries to reconcile all the different statements, not only of Daniel, but the prophet of Zechariah, and the prophet of Chezkel, and in fact the prophecies of Yishmael and Yirmiyahu also, and which also hinted at in the parsha we read on Shabbos. In order to understand deeply what is the procedure of prophetic books of the Bible, the Tanakh, the sages say there are 70 faces to the Torah, and there are many different prophecies of what's going to happen, but the Rambam puts it this way: we only really know what the prophecy means when it actually happens. We are now, clearly, according to the full descriptions, it's history, which is corroboration of all historical records, also the nations of the world. And I must say that of all the commentators on the prophetic statements of the Chumash, and then afterwards of the prophets, the most thorough one was Don Yitzchok Abarbanel, who was a great genius. He was the leader of Spanish Jewry, when unfortunately, although he absorbed fantastic knowledge of Torah, and not only that, he had a comprehensive knowledge, not only the philosophies and the sciences of the day, but also, at that time, the golden period of Spanish Jewry. It was known the Jews were high intellectuals. And he also possessed enormous historical knowledge and had available many different manuscripts and different ancient books of history from the Greeks and from the Romans, and certainly from the earliest period of Jews in Europe and in Spain. So he was able to analyze on a deep level what the Fourth Kingdom is. Now, the traditions are like this. The Fourth Kingdom is known as the Kingdom of Edom. It takes its cultural roots in Esau. And he even describes how is it that Esau and Edom, which the names were given in the Chumash, was afterwards transformed from this, one called it the Middle Near East, and later it was transformed and transferred to Europe, to Italy. You go in this in deep, it shows that this is, in fact, the historical traditions of the Romans themselves, and how there's a connection. Everyone knows that the Greeks and the Romans, they took the alphabet and many of their original thoughts, many of the traditions, they took them from Hebrew and from the Kedem, which Kedem is the Eastern wisdom. We've already explained a few times the wisdom of Solomon was spread also to Europe. And not in the wisdom, also his commerce, but together with the commerce came the wisdom. So he traces that Edom, which afterwards had its capital in Rome, and it explains also this relationship to Rome and Judea, and the way in which the Romans also developed great hostility to the people of Israel, although it had ups and downs, but they also adopted the very great cruelty against Judea, and the Jews who were there, and they burnt up the temple. Then afterwards they brought great persecution upon the remnant of the Jews. But then at the same time, they also absorbed many of the traditions of the Jews in different ways, and describes the rise of Christianity and how secular Rome developed into Christian Rome. So therefore he says, Rome is the fourth empire, and Rome is iron, represented by the iron, which I think everyone understands what that means. But the iron was first the secular power, the idolatrous power of the Romans, and afterwards the Christian power of the Romans, which is also iron, and worse than iron. And he, Don Yitzhak Abarbanel, traces it so thoroughly. He says Christianity, and afterwards the civilization that came both from the Romans who absorbed Greek culture and afterwards absorbed Christianity, this is the fourth empire. And he says the clay is a representative of the weaker developments that also came originally as a result of Christianity. As well known, Muhammad first wanted to become a Jew and a Jewish teacher. When his illusions grew, so the rabbi was teaching him, gave him up, and so Muhammad, he turned to Christianity. But then the Christians also wouldn't accept him, because he had his own perhaps illusory religious experiences, and he founded Islam. So Islam was like a development that came out from Christianity on a low level. But it's not really the fourth empire, because there was never a proper empire. And neither did they have any connection with the destruction of the temple. And therefore they're not considered one of the actual independent empires. And in this also, the Abarbanel followed his predecessor, who also was not shortly before his time, who was the greatest scholar in Spain, the Ramban, who was well known. He had his famous disputation with an apostate, someone who left Judaism and became a Christian priest, and he had a famous disputation with him. Who's right? Are the Christians right? Are the Jews right? And it's well known that Ramban had to make this in front of the King Ferdinand and Isabella, who were already, to some extent, agents of the Inquisition. And although he won the debate, so the king said, you'd better escape the country quickly. So that's how he came here to Israel. And that's why I've got here in Yerushalayim the remnants of the synagogue, which he built in the old city, known as the Ramban synagogue. That's before Abarbanel. And Abarbanel himself, so he says, if you want to understand the fourth kingdom, this is Edom, Christianity. And this was accepted also basically by the Rambam and certainly by the Ramban. Or Abarbanel also accepted it. There is another view though, Rav Saadia Gaon, who preceded the Rambam. He said the fourth kingdom is really a combination of the two. The fourth kingdom, before the Mashiach will come, will include the powers of Edom, but still the ultimate power of destruction and terror against the Jewish people. The Chavli Mashiach, the most difficult birth pangs, will come through Islam. That's Ibn Ezra's opinion. Ibn Ezra was very deep, short but precise, and some said witty, enormous wisdom in his few words of the Tanakh, interpretation of the whole of the Bible. This is very, very deep, worthwhile considering. But the major view is the one that I mentioned before. I just want to show you how far the Abarbanel, we can understand that he saw in his time, he also saw the spread of Islam. On the other hand, he saw that the cruelty and evil of Christianity against the Jewish people was in his time much more severe. And I want to bring you here because his commentaries are very long, where he brings many sources which are not available elsewhere. Obviously, he's well versed in Josephus, and all the Jewish historians of previous ages. Is similarly well versed in all the historical records which are available to him, which are available at that time, concerning the development of the different empires and the different forces in the history of the Near East and of Europe. I just want to show you here a very interesting description he gives, because he makes deep use of all the inner Jewish traditions. So it says like this: the Chachmei HaEmet, and we have different types of wise scholars who had deep insight into the Torah. The Chachmei HaEmes, also in the words of the Ramban, refer to those who, what we call today, they were well versed in all the traditions of the Kabbalah. To understand what is the Kabbalah, it's really a continuation in a hidden manner of prophecy. We shouldn't think that the Zohar and books of the later Kabbalah, the Arizal, that they brought new things. The Talmud in Chagiga speaks about the Pardes, the spiritual experiences of the hidden, mysterious secrets of the universe which are revealed in the Torah. Not all revealed in the explicit Torah, they're revealed to the prophets. And then they were passed on, at the conclusion of prophecy, to select scholars on a very high level. And it says there in the Mishnah, afterwards in the Gemara Chagiga, these matters should only be revealed to individuals. It was always understood that the deeper secrets of the Torah should not be abused and misunderstood by people who have not reached that high level. It's very important also for today, because these days, Kabbalah in the whole world, also in the Jewish world, has become very widespread, and therefore is liable to enormous abuse. This is happening today, but it's because they're very deep. But anyway, he brings here the Chachmei Emes. He says like this, that the soul of Esav became reincarnated in Jesus, the Christian. And that explains that he was a man who argued with the Pharisees, with the Prushim, who held the right oral traditions. And maybe that's why it's called Yeshua in Hebrew, the same letters as Esav. Esav and Yeshua are the same letters in Hebrew. And that's why all those that uphold Christianity and they worship him, it's fit to call them Bnei Edom, since Yeshua is Esav and Esau is Edom. And as he explains also, Rome was the place where the Christianity developed. It's true, it didn't take root in Judea. At the beginning there was a Jewish following, but it didn't last. That's why Paul had to turn to the Roman Empire, to the wider sections of mankind, to spread this religion, which was really, to some extent, as described also by great Jewish scholars, it was the application of the Noahide code for all other people, together with a semi-idolatrous acceptance of God. Because the Jewish religion is that God cannot be man. It was really the same type of mistake that was made at the time of the sin of the golden calf. They also thought the religion comes through Moses, and if Moses isn't there, we've got to have someone to represent him. But there was a certain group who couldn't bring themselves to accept and have strong faith in one spiritual God. And in fact, we found a revival of this in our time amongst those who distort Lubavitch Hasidus and also make a man into the Mashiach, and some of them make that man into God. The extreme Mashiachistim, some of them, in fact they call them Elohistim. So these are dangers that exist in all generations. We can understand, therefore, more easily how Christianity began. It became a worldwide movement. And from Christianity we afterwards have, let's say, the better parts of it that are training human beings to become more moral. And Western civilization contains these elements even if they've left Christianity. And the Islam also has its ups and downs in this respect. What we experience today is really, as we explained yesterday, it's unfortunately the stronger power of Pere over Adam. Adam is the name given to Yishmael because he believes in one God and took on a Brit Milah, which means self-control. But the self-control is just, unfortunately, frequently, it's lost through the wildness that takes hold of them. So, he therefore says like this, when it says, it brings, why is it that everything with Esav is red It's because that's the concept also of Edom. To connect it with Edom. Edom means the red ones. The red ones, in other words, who allow violence to take over. And here obviously is referring to the violence of the Crusaders and the Inquisition, developed Christianity. So, from this, I want to tell you the following, also a quotation from Dom Yitzchak Abarbanel. I said yesterday, explained already, how he had to lead the hundreds of thousands of Jews to leave Spain in the year of the Inquisition, 1492, on Tisha B'Av. So now from here, let's go to the phrase we read in the parsha of last week of Bilam. Because what does Bilam say there? When he describes the final empire which will seek to destroy the Jewish people. And what's going to happen then? So if you turn to page 192, Christian Bible, chapter 24 of Bamidbar, and you look at this pasuk, it says, Vayisam Shalom Vayomar. Bilam said, Oi, mi yechyeh misum mo'el. Who's going to live when there will be a human being who takes the name of God? One of the translations. Who will live? When Christianity rules the world. What's the root of Christianity? God became man. Who's going to live then? So, one of the interpretations, which is brought already to the sage as well, is it means if Christianity is going to follow its idea that God can be man, really it's a compromise with idolatry. What does it do? It takes away all spiritual life. Any Jews who accept this, they must know, that's one of the interpreters know, they're not going to live to eternity. You can't accept that. You must not admit that God became man. You must not admit the basic dogma of Christianity. And even if the non-Jews tell you, if you're not going to admit it, we're going to burn you at the fire, then you know you'll have no eternal life. The other explanation is, it's also a danger for the whole world. The Crusaders and others that suffered violence, or the Inquisition, spread in so many aspects of the Middle Ages Christianity, very dangerous. And we can see a trace of this. Who's going to live? From the aftermath of Christianity, of the cruel aspect of Christianity, the distortions in the Holocaust. And in the effort of what we can call the most cruel development of Esav and Edom and Rome in its worst aspects, building up that even people like Nietzsche and others and philosophers, and those who sometimes interpreted these philosophies in idolatrous manner, they thought it's a destiny of those who are the Aryan peoples. That's how it's been distorted again, many different ways, but it's a feeling of destiny from above to go and destroy in the most cruel manner others, especially the Jews and other nations. It's al-Kharb Chatichye, it's Orchim Tzeisa, you can live by the sword. So, Miyichye, who's going to live? And since the Holocaust, was also followed, or even partly at the same time, by Stalin's, by the communists' way of killing millions of people, innocent people. Who knows where it's going to stop? And as we see, we go back to the original vision of Daniel, that the way in which the clay has taken over the iron, in other words, that the Muslim world, which did have its good points, and which does say we've got to accept the Torah of Moshe, but it's been distorted, and there's been this partnership established between Western evil, which has in it elements of the Inquisition and the Crusaders, together with the wildness of the Muslims. So that's been translated. A few years before Hitler came to power, they moved to Jerusalem, made a massacre in the yeshiva, killing them off. And I find out when I came to yeshiva in Hebron, it's called Hebron, until today in Yerushalayim. So I met some of the survivors of that massacre, the older people in that who came to pray in that yeshiva. And then he became a partner with Hitler, making, in fact, his home in Berlin together with Hitler, and persuading Hitler, you go and kill all the Jews in Palestine. That's the priority. So this is Miyichye, who's going to live once you follow these perversions of the true God. So I'll tell you, it said like this: when the disciples of Don Yitzhak Abarbanel, they had to escape from Spain, they came then to other countries, to Morocco, to Italy, many also to Tzfas, Eretz Israel. So his disciples asked him, where is there a hint in the Torah for the Inquisition? And the way in which the Inquisition was torturing Jews till they will admit to the true God, what they thought was the true God, the false God of Christianity. So it says, hinted at in this verse, Oi is woe, who will live Mishtumael? It says, that is a reference to Jesus, who made himself into a God, and there'll be Jews at that time who will think that they can save themselves by declaring Christianity. Even they don't, but they don't have to declare. So the Pasuk says, no, mi yichyeh. If you're going to give in to these cruel agents of the Inquisition, and you give in to them, you won't be able to live. And also there's two aspects. Don't let them find out what you're doing. Keep everything a secret. There's many of the Jews, they couldn't take anything with them to be banished, so they decided they're going to stay and become secret Jews, the Maranos, which means swine, so, or the Cheta, our little piglets. So they said, here in this verse we see that the Christians, they'll burn you at the stake, they'll torture you. Not everyone understands that torture. You might come out with such statements. That's the unfortunate situation we're in. But in Yitz Hashem, as is described also by Bilam, and Bilam is Bola'am. Bilam is the way in which the nations of the world, some of them, they have even visionaries, people who've got all sorts of imaginary plans about the end of the world, or the change of the world, and they want to swallow up the people of Israel. The Bola'am means to swallow them up. They swallow them up with curses, with lies, false propaganda. They also swallow them up afterwards by making sure they don't continue to exist. So that's the suffering we've had to go through. And this is a hint for, he said, for also the most terrible method of burning them in public, slowly to torture them until they reduce to ashes. So this, I'll just start now with the following interesting, more recent development. Because I think it's about two or 3 years ago that Spain came out, the government, with the following declaration. The government of Spain consented a few things: to allow a team of researchers to enter the official archives of the Inquisition for historical research purposes. They also invited all those who had ancestors, or they themselves were still like Moranos. They can declare their faith in public, and they apologized for all the evils which were done 500 years ago by the Christians in Spain, also by the Spanish government. They regretted it, and they're giving Spanish citizenship to any of the descendants of those Jews. And they opened their archives 2 years ago. The investigative team uncovered the name of the last Jews to be burned at the stake in 1691. Who were the last Jews? To find out, a person called Rafael Valles. Valles is Spanish for the valley. His student, because he was like a teacher of Torah, Rafael Benito Terongi, and Terongi's sister, Catalino Terongi. They lived in Majorca, the island near Spain. And theirs was the last official auto de fe carried out by the Inquisition on Spanish soil. Now, there's a person, it's a close friend of mine, and he, I know it's had the most unusual return to Torah. His name is Joseph Valles. And he had heard maybe his ancestors came from Spain. You know how many Ashkenazi people come from Spain? My family, the Horowitz family, used to be called Benvenisti, also come from Spain. Originally, the Horowitzes are Sephardic. Their origin is in Spain, in pre-Inquisition Spain. Then afterwards, one of these Benvenistes, he would go to Italy, from Italy to Czechoslovakia, he settled in a town called Horowitz. So the surname came according to the place. So if you trace your family tree, you'd be surprised at complete relationships between European, West European Jewry and Sephardi Jewry coming from Spain. So he became, Joseph Valles became a Baal Teshuva through, primarily through an organization called Arachim, with which also I've been connected since I've been here. And my son Yishmael, he officially works for them also for many years already. So he was very interested. He found, because he got also seminars to make Bali Teshuva in South America. So he's got Spanish-speaking teachers who go out to try and bring also Spanish-speaking students back to Torah who didn't know about it. So when he heard about this record, so he got together with someone who has made more thorough research, in the archives of the Inquisition, where everything was recorded. Just like, we know the Nazis did the same. They made records. Many of them disappeared. You can't find them all. But here and there you find their records of all their killings. Who was killed. You've got numbers and so on. Numbers with the name. And it turns out that he decided that this Raphael Wallace was probably his ancestor. So he got in touch with an Israeli journalist who was working in that area, Birnbaum, and he was part of the team that had gone through the Inquisition records, written in Argentina. And he was an expert on Spanish Jewish history. He called him, and he decided to go and visit Majorca, where the last Auto da Fe burnt at the stake, his ancestor maybe, called Raphael Wallace. Anyway, he went together with another journalist, and he found out, they looked through all the records, this Birnbaum found the case of Raphael Wallace, 1,000 pages long, filled with the densely flowing script of the Inquisition scribe who covered the trial and the dramatic events that transpired in the Inquisition dungeons and torture chambers in horrific detail. Because they had to already try their best to get these people to convert. He was in secret teacher of Torah. So they got hold of him. And so after reading the 100 pages Spanish script, the Wallace family lived in Majorca, an island off the coast of Spain, and this Raphael, he'd moved there, and he'd been a successful business beforehand, before the Inquisition, and specializing in import-export. And now there was on this island, his line of work put him in touch with sailors and ship captains on a regular basis, and made a liaison with his community of Anusim. We call them Anusim, forced. People are forced to accept Christianity. And the Jewish world that exists outside Spain. And that's why the Holy Office of the Inquisition put him under scrutiny. And the network of spies gave strict orders to keep him under close surveillance. So in the end, they accused him of serious things. And then the order was given for his arrest. But to describe what happened, I'm going to leave this because all these things have great significance, in my opinion, and been produced in an autobiography of this Yosef Wallace and his ancestors, which is incredible. Incredible. Hashgacha Pratit is something amazing. So I'll continue this in the next class. So, any questions or comments?
When we talk in the Bible about the dream of Nebuchadnezzar, and Daniel is interpreting it, so Hashem sent him the same dream he had, but he had another one, seeing beast, like in 2 days. The first he saw the 3 of the 4 Arba Malchuyot, with the
I'm not going it's outside the scope of time and even ability to go and give even a quotation of the various dreams of Nebuchadnezzar.